CNN reports the media is slashing jobs again as the Trump news cycle fades and the economy struggles. Well, I can proudly say that with all of your support, members over at timcast.com, we're doing really well. We're actually talking about bringing on some writers and doing some real news, even commissioning field reports. So no, the media isn't collapsing. The fake media is collapsing. And it seems that reasonable people who want to be honest and present factual news and give their honest opinions, well, they're actually doing really well. This entire media apparatus built up around ragging on Donald Trump couldn't last, and we all knew it. Most of the conservative channels still recognized criticism of Trump. They just presented that counter to the establishment narrative. And of course, there are many people who want to gloat over the collapse of media, but I will say it's not all just the fake news. There actually are very important small town papers being negatively impacted by what's going on in media. But I have to say, my friends, with the Huffington Post and many other outlets slashing jobs, it's actually good news. Now, CNN is acting like it's the apocalypse because they're the orange man bad network. Well, too bad. But check this out from Jacobin. For those that aren't familiar, Jacobin is it's the go-to socialist magazine. And they write, mass layoffs at the Huffington Post signal doom for journalism. I want to read to you what's happening with CNN. And I want to read you the opinion from the left. But I want to point out one thing first. Mass layoffs at the Huffington Post it does not signal doom for journalism. In fact, my friends, this may be some of the best news we've heard for journalism in a long time. Now, of course, the fake news activists at Huffington Post who write garbled anti-Trump garbage, yeah, they're losing their jobs. But I will also point out, it's possible the first to go are the actual reporters. You see, real news doesn't make all that much money. They want to keep on the crazy crackpots who write fake news rage bait that gets you to click. So it's a double-edged sword. But I will point out, as the Huffington Post begins to struggle, we may see a return for small town papers. In this post from the Media Post, they say small Kansas City paper runs a blank front page to dramatize its fight to stay alive. I get it. They say it was founded in 1932. I drive through some of these towns and I see these big buildings for their old media industry, these old newspapers, and they're failing. We need local journalism. We need real journalism. For your town, for your city, we need people reporting on the corruption of government officials and the good things that politicians rarely, but sometimes do, so that we can have a better functioning constitutional republic with democratic institutions. The problem for small town papers like Northeast News is that people increasingly go to the Huffington Post and BuzzFeed for their confirmation bias dopamine hit. And so long as they do, these small papers suffer, which brings me back to the first story from CNN. They report, for years, the media industry has been forced to compete with tech platforms for advertising revenue and consumers' time. Now, in addition to those same pressures, publishers will see increased competition for attention as the economy opens back up. Last March, media owners reacted to the economic fallout of the pandemic with furloughs, layoffs, and other cost-cutting measures. This March, as the world enters the next phase of the pandemic, 4 notable brands made major announcements that signified more instability in the industry. First, it was HuffPost, a 15-year-old publication that made deep cuts shortly after a major merger with BuzzFeed. Then Medium, a publishing platform known for frequent changes in its business strategy, pivoted once again and offered buyouts to all of its editorial staff. And then a lesser known but beloved men's lifestyle digital outlet, Mel Magazine, was shut down by its owner, Unilever's Dollar Shave Club. Vice Media also cut a handful of top jobs this week, positioning itself as a restructuring rather than a cost-cutting move. This is what they always say. But my friends, it is the bloodbath. You see, Donald Trump put pressure on the wound for the media. Vice CEO Shane Smith mentioned before Trump, he said, we're going to see layoffs, man. It's a coming. Trump came around. They found a way to survive, writing rage bait to trigger the dopamine hits of people who don't like Donald Trump. And it was a sickness, an addiction. And I talk to people and it breaks my heart. People who are good, honest Americans who respect the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, love guns and gun safety, but point out that they say all of these fake things about Trump. And I'm like, man, to begin the deprogramming would be very difficult. And this is true for the fringe right conspiracy theorist types as well. They've gone off the deep end the other way. Why? They don't trust the media. And if you don't trust the media, you're going to look for other information that confirms your bias. The problem, look, the Q people and all that, there's not that many of them. And they're finding a way to just talk to each other and spread ideas. When CNN and BuzzFeed and Huffington Post are the ones pumping out the insane rage bait, they're driving regular people insane because they're the platforms people actually go to. So it's a good thing, my friends, for journalism that these outlets are fading. They say about 130 million people in the U.S. and nearly 500 million globally have been vaccinated against COVID-19, which means some semblance of normalcy is on the horizon. But this, coupled with the fact that the Biden administration doesn't drive a nonstop news cycle like its predecessor, means that consumers are starting to spend less time on their screens. Some digital media companies also have been preparing to go public, providing an exit for longtime investors, but could be a reason for more job cuts. I think these media companies are looking at the dollar signs, and it's just not there. Think about what that means. The Biden administration is not driving nonstop news. That's Joe Biden. You see, Donald Trump was an obsession for so many people. He knew how to drive the media crazy. He knew how to make a hit show. And there were pros and cons to this. In one sense, Donald Trump got more votes than any other sitting president for a re-election ever, 74.2 million. At the same time, the media weaponized Trump's bombastic personality, and 80 million votes came in from the other side, and now you get Biden, which was a big error on the part of the media in terms of a business strategy. But, maybe business strategy comes second in terms of what they want to write about. I think they genuinely were writing anti-Trump news to make money, in which case it ultimately resulted in, cutting open the goose that laid the golden egg. They helped get rid of Donald Trump, and now they got rid of their own jobs and their companies, and the bloodbath is coming back. A point of no return. They say HuffPost was losing more money than BuzzFeed CEO Jonah Peretti could stomach. When Peretti announced on March 9th that 47 HuffPost employees were losing their jobs and HuffPost Canada and Quebec were shutting down, he revealed HuffPost's losses had exceeded $20 million last year and estimated it would be similar this year without intervention. Woo! Wow. This is amazing. $20 million last year? Last year during COVID? During this big political news cycle? Well, I got to be honest, everybody. Yeah, it was really bad. And it was bad for us, too. I remember when the pandemic first hit, I was checking revenue for my company, and I was just like, yikes, man. We had to tighten our belts. And legit. Things started to change around the end of the year, and we saw a massive upswing in demand for political commentary for obvious reasons. Politicians, Trump, Biden, the administration, all the PACs were competing like crazy to get premium ad space on channels like mine. Revenue skyrocketed. And now we're using that to build timcast.com and make something of ourselves. We've hired more people. Things are going great. If the Huffington Post couldn't figure out when they're the Orange Man Bad network, how to monetize that, that's shockingly insane to me. At the same time, however, I'm not surprised to see regular news taking a hit. Let me tell you the truth. What I do here, opinion, commentary, analysis, and to a certain degree, journalism. I always say it's maybe like 10%. I do call people and ask for comment on stories. I do call people and email for verification on stories. I've even reached out to the government on several occasions to try and verify certain stories I may see, or at least back up some of the claims. And I do fact check and cross-reference many of these stories. But it's mostly opinion analysis. So when I come on here and say the media is collapsing, the fall of Huffington Post does not signal doom for journalism. It's great. Well, people like that. At the same time, news itself, straight news, field reporting, very, very difficult, particularly when we were dealing with a political news cycle. People didn't want to see a video of Antifa in the street. I mean, somewhat they did. Sometimes they did. Those things still went viral. They wanted to hear what people thought about Trump and Joe Biden, which brings me to Jacobin. Now, Jacobin is the Socialist magazine. It's a reference. The name is a reference to the French Revolution. And I will fully admit I am a subscriber. Why? Two reasons. First and foremost, you gotta read what the opposition, what the people you disagree with are saying. I don't view the Jacobin people as enemies or bad guys. I view them as a group of people with beliefs different from mine that I need to understand. But more importantly, they have defended free speech on a number of occasions. So if I had to make a choice between which leftists would get some kind of prominence, it's going to be the ones defending free speech who I just happen to disagree with on economic policy. But they're wrong on this one. They say, mass layoffs, the Huffington Post signal doom for journalism. A massive round of layoffs, the Huffington Post confirms that the media industry stands at the edge of a precipice. The only way it can shield itself from the whims of sadistic media baron owners who care nothing for journalism is by looking beyond capitalist ownership. Let me stop right there. Okay, we'll read some of this, but let me point something out. The whims of sadistic media baron owners who care nothing for journalism. Do you think the people who are writing this like anti-Trump right-wing stuff care about reporting real news? Sorry, dude, you're wrong. When Donald Trump was with Shinzo Abe of Japan and they were feeding the koi fish, they zoom in on Trump, showing him dump the whole food into the pond. And then everyone in the media is like, I can't believe how crass and uncouth Donald Trump is. Then we learned it was an edit, selectively cut and manipulated so that you didn't see Shinzo Abe himself dumping his food into the koi pond and Trump just doing as Shinzo did. Trump did nothing wrong in that regard. The media lied to make money. That's not journalism. Quite honestly, it's the opposite of journalism. So no, when you write Huffington Post, signaling doom for journalism, these layoffs, it's the opposite. The more we get rid of this stuff, the more we can get back to articles that are actually news. So that's what we're planning. What we're going to have over at timcast.com in terms of written articles is going to be we're going to have a ton of extremely stringent, nearly encyclopedia-esque news stories. A list of our sources, numbered, similar to how Wikipedia operates. Big, bold letters. This is opinion and analysis. Please check the sources to confirm what you read in this regard. And then we're going to have links in the article and links to every single source we use. And they're all going to be certified by NewsGuard. That way, y'all can't say we're putting out fake news. And we're going to counter these lies. That's coming soon. The new website is launching very soon. They say, given their appalling regularity these days, media layoffs have begun to take on the character of a grim ritual that follows a now all too familiar pattern. With great pomp, a big industry player, media baron, or venture capitalist will announce a bold new merger or acquisition, often promising to rescue or streamline a failing venture. Within a few years, or sometimes a mere few months, this chirpy PR will suddenly give way to the language of hard-headed financial calculus, after which a spate of layoffs invariably follows. In respect, the devastating closures and layoffs announced earlier this week by the Huffington Post struck quite a few familiar notes. Acquired last year by BuzzFeed, and we know this. I want to stop and point something out. There is an iota of truth to this article. I understand the need to get away from the capitalist media barons and venture capitalists. Jacobin is right. They are. You see, here's what happens. You had a newspaper, and the newspaper is subsidized by ad revenue, but they've got typically a strong market position. They didn't have to compete with Facebook or Google or the internet. So it didn't really matter for the most part what they wrote because the ads would still buy the space because circulation was there. Thus, there could be a Democrat or Republican politician. Now, these newspapers would still try and pick an editorial slant. Wall Street Journal leans right, New York Times leans left. But they knew that the circulation was going to make some money, and they knew that the advertisements would make them money as well. When that dried up, the sadistic media barons of venture capital or otherwise said, here's an opportunity to make money. And here's how I describe what happened. One day, someone goes to one of these media barons and says, I would like to do an investigation into this corrupt politician. And the guy says, all right, how much is it going to cost? And they say, well, we're going to need about $500,000. We've got to hire a team of journalists. We're going to need to produce a video of our report and write it all up. I think for the year, $500,000. Okay, what's our return on that investment? I don't know. How do you make money off that? Sell subscriptions? Well, hold on. Some of these people are going to be offended because the person you're writing about, they support. They don't want to hear that. And you don't even know if these accusations are true. Sorry, I'm not going to spend this money. There's no return on that investment. You then get a guy walking in and saying, yo, we're going to write Orange Man bad 5,000 times in an escalating with exponentially absurd ridiculousness. It's going to cost $5,000 and you're going to make $1 million. And the guy's like, there it is. So what happens? Many of these venture capital funded outlets shifted their tone, started firing news reporters, started hiring rage bait reporters, and it was the lust for a quick buck that destroyed these outlets. That's why I'm not a staunch laissez-faire capitalist. I don't believe the solution for the most part is like nationalizing the media. That's probably not a good idea. Maybe having some publicly funded media with some restrictions, I understand. But perhaps what's going to happen now is a hole in the market. Now that these organizations are failing and the Trump bump era is gone and we're in the Trump slump, I mean, it's no surprise that many people who are following have gone to timcast.com and become members. And we're getting to the point where we're going to be launching original shows. Like we're going to go crazy on this. It's going to be fantastic. Moderate political commentary, fact checked, sourced, everything. And not woke, but interesting stories and movies. That's the plan. It's only possible because these outlets went nuts. But Jacobin does mention a good point. So long as there are people whose sole interest in these media companies was maximizing profit, they were hiring lunatic extremist activists to write lunacy. It made them money. That was it. Journalism used to be a loss leader, meaning that a newspaper would write a heavy-hitting story for prestige. They wanted to be talked about town. It's marketing. Doing breaking news on the ground, filming things, marketing. Why? Something happens. I need to know what's happening. We're hearing these crazy reports on Twitter. Here's, John Doe and Jane Doe from timcast.com reporting on the scene. Do we make any money reporting that? Not directly. But with that reporting, the brand name gets out. We lose money, but it helps market for the paper. That's always been how news had operated. And they would try and do commentary and movie reviews in the sports page to create something more interesting and entertaining. In today's day and age, it's all just infotainment. I mean, honestly, so is what I'm doing right here. I certainly think that I do something particularly different from what the media does, but it's all relatively the same. And the main reason is that information is traveling faster than ever. If Donald Trump did a backflip off the balcony of the White House and landed like superhero landing, you'd have heard about it the moment it happened. Everybody be talking, Twitter would be lighting up. So why go to a newspaper for any of this stuff? Well, people stopped. News became not valuable for many of these outlets. So they shifted and became rage bait trash outlets. That's just the reality. Now, I'll be honest. A lot of people would say something similar about me. They'll say, I used to cover things on the ground, and then I started doing news and political commentary. Maybe, but I will say it's different. Maybe there's just an opposing view. Maybe this is my bias. But one of the big reasons why I stopped going on the ground was because of the death threats and the physical attacks against me and the violence. I just couldn't do it. So, we made efforts to launch, some actual reporting from the ground and get that job done, which we're still planning on expanding. And with this, I'm trying to fact check the media and call out the lies because as news fell apart, we just got absolutely swarmed by a tsunami, a wave crashing over us of fake news. And then every day I tried to report on what's going on, it was becoming harder and harder. I'd go out on the ground and I'd be like, hey, look, this Antifa guy threw an explosive at an old lady. And the media would come out and say, violent right-wingers attack peaceful protests. And I'm like, that didn't happen. And then very easily over time, field reporting started turning into me calling out the media. And then with that and with calling out Antifa, the threats turned it into something else. What I want to do now and what we're going to do with the launch, with the expansion of timcast.com, like I mentioned, sources, very bold and clear labeling of opinion, all of that stuff, comment section, all of that stuff. And we're going to bring on actual reporters and commission actual news reports and do it right. In the meantime, I don't know what Jacobin's idea of the solution is. They certainly think that maybe some nationalization. Here's what they say. They say the industry's weakening capacity to sustain stable or gainful employment has consequences that go far beyond the livelihoods of individual journalists or other employees. Taken as a whole, the landscape of American media is trending towards something increasingly consolidated, centralized, and conglomerate controlled. Alt weeklies are practically dead. Gawker and Deadspin are gone. I think that's good about Gawker and Deadspin. Digital ventures are either struggling or being kicked around like footballs by media oligarchs. Local news is a desert. The buzzards of organized wealth, meanwhile, are perpetually circling the corpses and picking away at whatever meat remains. As Brendan O'Connor, formerly of Gawker, put it earlier this week, in a decade, all media will be the New York Times and the Washington Post. All the former startups will consolidate into a single Vice feed conglomerate that publishes a quarterly New York magazine and is owned in part by Facebook, and everything else will be Disney and Amazon. And this is where I'm going to say, y'all are wrong. We're coming for you. Figuratively, in the business world, we're coming for you. We are going to be doing it right. We're going to be producing content that speaks truth to power. We're going to call out the establishment and these massive conglomerates and their desperate attempts at rage bait, and they will lie about us, and they will smear us, and they will do everything in their power to stop us. That we will not be the Vice feed. We will not be the New York Times, the Washington Post, and things are going well thanks to all of you who are watching. This is my intent. I'm not going to back down because Jacobin gets a lot of it right. You know, they're so close. It is a problem. The centralized, conglomerate controlled, all of this stuff is bad. But Gawker and Deadspin were VC-funded rage bait rags. They produced tabloid garbage. They didn't speak real truth to power. Maybe at some point they did, but they don't now. The venture capital came in and it changed the game. Guess what? With your support, we don't need it. We're going to grow as quickly as we can. It's not completely easy to do. It would be easier to take a massive investment and then hire on some, CEO type person or content person to start developing in the direction these companies went. I ain't going to do it. We are going to make sure it's done right to prevent that centralization that Jacobin points out. But you see, Jacobin, these writers, they're so close. They're still in the matrix. They view the Huffington Post as the resistance? No. They're a part of that machine and always have been. Donald Trump hated the conglomerate media, the corporate press. So what are you complaining about? Huffington Post is owned by Verizon. What do you think? Verizon losing power means media will begin decentralizing. Sort of. Polarizing, I should say. More and more independent channels will emerge. But these people at Huffington Post and Gawker and all these other types of outlets are doing everything in their power to crush the independent media. No, we are not going to stand by and do nothing because the independent media cast is going to be expanding and we're going to be hiring people and it's going to be very different. Our business model is going to be built upon providing you with the best quality journalism we can provide and commentary. And with paying members, we won't have to worry about advertisements. We'll have ads, of course. We'd be stupid to walk away from it. But like the New York Times, they rely on subscriptions, and there are people who blindly trust them. They're not all bad, but there are problems emerging in the New York Times, especially at the Washington Post. So how about this? Maybe the New York Times and the Washington Post will take over the media space, but maybe there will be some alternative voices, not just mine, but others. So long as the independent media apparatus in this country survives and makes money, there will be a decentralization because the New York Times, they can't last forever. But I think they're doing well, and I think they may grow more. In the meantime, I think there's actually good news for all of us. We need to get away from the hyper-polarized, hyper-partisanship. Look, you might think that I'm biased because I don't like the Democrats, but I certainly don't treat the world like the apocalypse between the fascist far right and the ultra-communists or anything like that. I have my bias. I think the woke stuff is insane. I think there is a rise in the far left, but I think for the most part, you have a lot of moderates in this country. And the reason why we're seeing fringe far left on the rise is because the conspiracy trash of Verizon-owned media like Huffington Post. At least I believe they're owned by Verizon. I could be wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. I was wrong. BuzzFeed bought them. There you go. So BuzzFeed, whoever funds them, it's all centralizing. Let's break that apart. So I guess I'll just say this. I didn't I effectively promoted timcast.com. But thank you all so much for those that are members. Because we're not going to let you down. We're going to get this job done. There's more to come. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.